listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
Welcome to episode 90 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and joining me today is Tim Walsh. Tim is the head coach of the Aussie men's sevens team and the former head coach of the Aussie women's sevens team. He coached the women's team to the first ever Olympic sevens gold medal in Rio, Brazil, 2016, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. How's things? How's Australia kicking on?
Mate, we can't complain. I think we're in a pretty decent place to experience the pandemic. So, we're in a pretty good position. And even actually this morning, I just went to the kit launch for the Olympic team. So we was out there on Circular Quay there at the Rocks on Sydney Harbour, and things just sort of got even more real, which is awesome. The goosebumps and the motivation was certainly rising.
Yeah, and that's nice too from a certain point of optimism as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that the players or the athletes, all of them really, just need to see it. Like, I think constantly throughout this period they're getting asked, is it on? Is it on? I was like, of course it's on. It's been postponed. It's on. So, but to have that something tangible that I can actually wear and see, I think it made a big difference to their mental state.
Nice one. We'll probably dip into some of those concepts later on as we get into the interview. But what about yourself? What's your rugby background playing? Originally, how'd you get into the game, and what were some of those first experiences like?
Yeah, I think I was 5 years old and my dad took me down to the local club, East Tigers in Brisbane, down at Bottomley Park. And I remember getting tackled for the first time, and my head was sort of buried into the grass, and you could smell the grass, and you could for whatever reason I loved it, and I never stopped playing from then. And rugby's given me so much as well, friendships, discipline, and even a post playing career, which I ended up in coaching. So very fortunate, and I believe I've experienced everything rugby's had to offer. I've travelled around the world several times and played in England, Italy, USA, New Zealand, and just really enjoyed and thrived with everything that rugby's been able to give, and my job to give back as well. So, yeah, I think very early age, fell in love with the game and haven't really stopped.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a common thread with a lot of guests that I have on the show. And what about those first coaching experiences? Who conned you into coaching first off, and what were those first sessions like?
Yeah, David Nusafora actually got me.
Nice.
I never wanted to be a coach, to be honest. I grew up wanting to play, obviously, and then wear a suit and go and work. And I still don't mind putting on a suit, but I had no intention of being a coach. Probably because I didn't really understand it. I didn't know what kind of coach I wanted to be. But in 2010, I found myself back at the Reds playing in Super Rugby, and Ewan McKenzie was my coach. And the way that he coached, I was really interested in, and his style was not only about the technical strategy of on field, but the off field side of things. Not only dealing with individuals, but the marketing, the economics, the strategy. How to get your team to perform better, or get the game to perform better, which ultimately gets your team to perform better. So he was running it like a business, and then he had the excitement to then do it on the weekend and put in match strategies. So I don't know. I've always found the rugby side of things pretty easy. Like, we're all those who've been playing a lot of footy. Technically, understand the game. And there are obviously guys who are better at it than others, but that tends to be the easy bit. It's all at the high level, at the highest level. It's all about the politics and the relationships and the entertainment and recruitment and your depth of team, the people around you, the psychology, basically running a business, but you're doing it in a game you love. So that's sort of where it sort of started. And then David Nucifora was basically offered me my first coaching role, which the first one he offered I turned down. It was the second one which I took.
Nice. I've had Jim Mackay and Bo Robinson. You might have been playing with Bo. They both speak really highly of Ewan McKenzie and that time period of the Reds. It was pretty magical, and for Aussie rugby, it was pretty awesome. What was some of the big memories from Ewan McKenzie that you get out of that period that are like, wow, that's really special what he's doing there?
Yeah, he was always composed, which I always because coaches are generally pretty hard on the sleeve, and they're pretty emotional, and they can really get lost in the moment. Which again,
I've been guilty of that.
Yeah, I think we all have, because we care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
controlling that and leading from the top, I guess, with your body language and attitude. I guess it all depends on what culture is, but Ewan very, very composed. But then very strategic and very well planned and very, very, very thoughtful. And then, like I said, he didn't just think about winning the game on the Saturday. He knew there were other things that went into it. I think he's written various articles about entertainment and winning. Because you need to get all your stakeholders on side to make sure that again, as a coach, you're getting what you need or what you want to win. And I really like the way he operated from that point of view.
Right, awesome. And what about in those earlier days? Some of the big mentors for you for your coaching development and progression. Who were some of those people, and what were some of the messages or lessons that you learned from them?
I was again fortunate or unfortunate because I travelled around the world largely because I wasn't good enough to stay in one place, and I could get shit. Some of them were by choice, but I had some amazing coaches throughout and different cultures. Like I said, all those different places I played at and different countries all brought something different. And then I had such a diverse style of people. Like I just rattled off like Ben Ryan, who ended up winning the gold medal with me as a coach. He coached me. I had Phil Davies at Wales. I had Stu Lancaster at Leeds. I had a British line coach, Andy Keast, at Worcester. The Kiwi influence with Russell Jones, David Nucifora, even Brian Ashton came down and Ben Ryan. The Italian experience, just the way that they brought teams together and the importance they put on different things. Ewan McKenzie. So just, a variety of different ones. But then there's, I certainly pull different things from different people. But David Nucifora was probably the biggest influence. He actually coached me as well. And then he coached against me when he was at the Brumbies. And then he sort of offered me the job at Rugby Australia, and then sort of mentored me for a good couple of years. And then he ended up working for me as an assistant coach to the women's team, which was quite odd, but incredibly humbling for me. A great for him to do that. It was it shows you the character of the guy. But and even now, he's high performance in Ireland.
Yeah, he's kicking goals there.
Yeah, he's still my sort of go-to for some big decisions. But he's very charismatic. Again, very composed, planned. He can step back and then look at things and then come up with the quickest path or the most intelligent way to get to where you're going. I think if I was going to label them, I think David would be certainly at the top there. But then under that, there's so many, and I think that's the beauty of my career as a player and a coach was to be able to have that, and then the ability to try and ascertain what works best for me in the right environment is something that you probably I've learnt as I've gone along and become more self-aware.
Yeah, that's key. Context. Speaking of context, you probably lived every Aussie kid's dream by securing a gold medal at an Olympic. What was that experience like? Obviously, it's different being a coach than the athlete, and it's the athletes who did the work on the field, but loads of work done off the field by the coaching staff and support staff and that. But how do you put that experience into words? Winning gold at Rio.
Yeah, it's I get asked that a bit,
No doubt.
But I mean, I only get asked it because we won.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be sitting here. But it actually exceeded any sort of expectation that we had. Like we're always going there to win it, but everything about it. So you sort of think about when we started, there was, a benchmark or a goal that we wanted to go and win an Olympic gold medal. And then we had this vision and this plan, and we grew as a team. I grew as a coach. We built relationships. We had so much fun. And then to see it culminate into this event in Rio, which we almost executed to the way that we exactly wanted it, and our plans basically unfolded how we sort of predicted it. And then beyond that, it was like Australia, we won the gold medal Tuesday morning, Australian time at 8 a.m. Australia, unfortunately, didn't win another gold medal for another 3 or 4 days. So everything was about the women's team winning the gold medal. But it's just amplified by the effort you put in, the relationships you build, the experiences you had together, and then to see it, formulate into a result that you've all been striving towards. Like it really was beyond expectation. So that's how I'd answer it. Yeah.
Yeah. What about managing that pressure? Because we, Australians, and not just Australians, but a lot of countries can be pretty harsh on their athletes if they don't, in inverted commas, perform, to those expectations that the public have, and often those expectations are a little bit, out there in terms of reality or context or those kind of things. I mean, how did you manage that across the tournament and in the lead up? Because that's obviously a lot of pressure for the players. What kind of strategies did you put in place for that?
Yeah, we put a lot of planning into debilitators around what was going to not let us perform. And there was the technical side, then there was the off-field side. And that was probably one of the biggest ones, was the pressure, the media, the going in as number one, going as the favourite. So we had to choose an attitude or I guess it's the undertone of our culture, but going into it, that we're going to the Olympics to perform without regret. So everything that we've done leading into it, our planning, our contingencies, whatever it is that we're there. So when we do finish the Olympics, win, lose or draw, we can actually walk away thinking we couldn't have done anything better. We are so happy or so proud of ourselves of what we did. And I think deep down we knew if we performed we were going to win. So that was sort of our ultimate, was to have that as our sort of benchmark. But then putting in strategy and how to deal with the pressure or deal with having to adapt or to be resilient. So we looked at who we could get involved, and our families were probably one of the biggest. They got us to where we were. So we basically brought them into the tent. So we had this
cool.
Olympic family day where they experienced what we were going through. So just to give them an idea, we had the girls deliver our cultural piece. We had an Olympic athlete, captain of the water polo team back then, Bronwyn Knox, and she was going to her third Olympics.
Wow.
We brought her mother in as well. So we had this whole sort of Q&A and question around how Bronny felt at her first Olympics, second Olympics, how Bronny's mum felt, what she would have done differently as a parent. So got her, and we got media in to do mock interviews with the families as their kids were competing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, got them just training, but got them sort of involved and understood what an Olympic athlete was going to go through. And then they became sort of guardians or gatekeepers of some of the performance issues. So we went through all the things that might happen while the girls are away. Whether it be media, pets, grandmothers, breaking up with partners, and then what our crisis management, I guess, is like, what's our structure of being able to do it? And then from a coaching or an organisation point of view was that we go to the Olympics and we don't perform, what's the plan? We go to the Olympics and we do perform, what's the plan? And it's even bigger this time around, because you look at what we're probably most likely going to be doing is going to the Olympics, playing your event, and then going home to quarantine for 2 weeks. So can you imagine?
Yeah.
You don't perform and you're sitting in a quarantine room for 2 weeks.
It's going to be, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's all that to consider. But I think we went in with really, really well planned around different things. But you can't control everything. And then our cultural piece was around being adaptive and being resilient and being creative. So if something did go wrong, it was like, yep, roll with it. We'll sort it out. Nothing's a problem. And of course it did. We got to Rio. We couldn't go in the village, so we had to go to our holding station. We got to the village. Things didn't work. This didn't work. That, all those things that we completely expected, and it wasn't an issue.
And that culture piece, I love that part of coaching. And how did you engage the players in that? Was that like a collective decision, several conversations, and then putting some things down on paper and living it? What was that? What was that process?
Yeah, so it was led. I mean, it's got to come from the top. So it was led by me, but then every input is from the players, and then you have a cultural health check. But the way that you design or deliver a culture is to look at your environment of which we compete in, and I think your culture has to reflect that. So if we're traveling, you travel to 10 different countries around the world. There's a lot of resilience and being adaptive there. Then you're playing six teams in 2 days, so having to adapt to different opposition, have that intelligence to different strategies, and the mentally tough to play injured, play really well and lose, play badly and win, play the next game, go to bed that night, wake up in the morning, play the most important game. So basically do an audit of your environment, and then your culture sort of has to reflect that. Right. And then within that group, how you're going to live, or what behaviours you're going to have, and that's probably you steer them to that sort of point, and then it's over to them. And then every year we'd have a weekend, and it'd just be the cultural health check. So we'd have our piece, and then adapt it, because your squad might change. You might go from a really old experienced team to a young development team, or where we started out, a team that had just turned pro. And then by Rio, they were sort of 3-year professionals, world number one. They weren't, like fifth or sixth anymore. So how does it reflect it? What behaviours do you do? So I think initially it was certainly directed by me, and then it was over to the group.
Yeah, cool, awesome. And what about you as a coach? Like an Olympic event's pretty massive, 3 days, pretty high octane kind of sporting experience. How do you manage like your downtime and even in game time your emotions and those kind of things? What have been some successful strategies for you?
Yeah, I have this little card in my pocket or my wallet that I just like to refer back to, and it just sort of reminds you like why you're doing it and what your sort of values are, and ultimately you're enjoying it. And I don't know, the people that you're around sort of make you feel good. So whether it be staff or the players, that you have the right people around you who are going to be authentic and honest and sort of know you well. which is great. And that's certainly what we had. But as a coach, you got to go to the Olympics or any big event in career best form, because you're leading from the top. You set the tone, and if you're stressed and worried and frazzled, it just vibrates through the whole team. So it's really important. If I give advice to Olympic coaches, is that you got to go there like all the hard work's done. When you go to the Olympics, you're just about being relaxed and positive and just keeping an eye on every single player, just making sure that they're staying in the guardrails, they're not sort of dropping off here and falling off there. That you're there for that's your role, because all the strategy and the training and that's locked away.
Yeah.
Your job is just to keep them mentally happy and mentally confident. So you got to be in that position too. So you can't be cramming or stressing or whatever. Is it your
last minute kind of changes or anything like that?
Yeah, you're feeling good. Whether it be your fitness, your mental health. You're in that position where you can be that person.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And you've transitioned now into the head coach role for the Aussie men's team for the Sevens. What's that been like? How's that changeover? I think you were interim with both for a while there, so that would have made it a smoother change.
Yeah, I had it in 2015. I did. I was coaching them both at the same time, and that was under the permission of the girls too. I didn't want to just go and do it, so we spoke to them about it. It was just going to be a 3-month thing, and it turned out really, really good. Got the boys qualified and picked up some different things, and back to the girls for gold. And then, making that decision was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and ultimately it was the right thing to do for them and for the team. Like for a lot of them, they'd only had me as their coach, for 5 or 6 years. Won the Olympic gold medal. Then at Sydney, we had this unbelievable event where we didn't get a point scored against us. It was just for both of us to evolve and be challenged in different ways. And it was a move across. It wasn't up to the man. It wasn't down. It was across. And like I said, the relationships and the care and the love or the passion I have for the players will be with me forever. So very hard decision. And then but once it was made, it felt it was the right thing. And then in the men's program, it was very challenging. All different challenges there. When I audited them, and I had them basically, I was meant to have the men's team after the World Cup, and then I got them 3 months before the end of the season, and it was rush job. I just had my second child, and it was all over the shop. So I sat back and just audited the whole sort of program, and then sort of came up with the vision to change it and to execute it. And the way that the team, what I saw was the way that they played, it needed some adjusting, and then a little bit of a cultural shift as well to maintain sustainability and to win benchmark events, not win benchmark events when everyone's level, everyone's peaking for the right time. And with that, with any change becomes resistance and uncertainty. And that's the things you have to deal with, and making tough decisions. I've never shied away with that with the women, and certainly didn't with the guys. And probably a lot harder than what I anticipated. But you look at the results. I think just before COVID, we were in some unprecedented form. Well, not unprecedented, but hadn't seen it for about 10 years. So it was not starting to, but it was certainly in the right direction. And COVID's thankfully just given us another year to be better.
Yeah. And so, how are you managing that time now with regards to not being able to play internationally? How are you keeping the team, competition ready? I suppose because you're probably waiting for the starters gun to go off at any time, and that's got to be a mental struggle for you as a coach, but also the players. What are some of the strategies you're putting in place there?
Yeah, we went through different phases, and the first one we didn't prioritise physical, we prioritised mental.
Nice.
Because everything that the player had was taken away. Playing as a team, travelling, their finances were heavily cut. They couldn't even, come to training and high five each other. It was like all the stuff in the contact sport or young men was basically taken away. So how could we fill in those gaps? There's no competition, so had lots of little strategies. Within that little period, we had like competitions and COVID packs and little competitions with videos and different things, and then we slowly sort of built it up into training. And then it was right. Okay, we have a new assignment for you. Is that you're going to go and play 15s? So we rang up all the super clubs and the club and in the club footy. Went them out and go, okay, your job here is to represent sevens and represent yourselves, to give yourselves options, but also to perform, to see this is what the sevens program is all about. These ruthless, adaptive, resilient, skillful athletes. So they all went out there and unbelievable. Club footy, they were being, touted as Wallaby bolters. In Super Rugby, they were all training, and then when they got their chances playing, and they were, talking to their GMs and head coaches, like, where do we get more of these sevens guys, kind of thing. So you see him now, like Timmy Anstey's in the Wallaby squad.
Yeah.
Lockie Anderson at the Rebels there is on fire, and then heaps of guys in the team have had contract offers from whether it be overseas or at super clubs for post Olympics. So that was a really positive thing. And then secondly, the team had limited funding, basically no funding. Whether we ended up getting a good bit of money from the government, but still well below, or millions below what was sort of required for the program. So, and there was little resources within Rugby Australia for all the same reasons that we were struggling. So our second task was to become business development managers for the team, tax and networks and ideas around what we could do to generate funding, or what things do we have, and all the players were out there meeting with high net worth people, business owners, organisations that had the capabilities to sponsor, and that was a really fun project, and a lot of it sort of came into fruition with various different ways, and we survived. So we generated some money and got us enough just to get us there, and then we got a little bit more funding, and even now that sort of process is still going, and we're sort of sitting here at the moment waiting for an answer on some big developments within our funding, all through player-led initiatives. So that was one way of dealing with it. So it was two ways. It was on and off the field, and switched back into the physical high performance Olympic sort of role. So it was about mental stability, obviously keeping our training up and working on 3 key areas that we believed were going to be the difference for us performing at the Olympics. So they go play club footy, Super Rugby. They'd come into us once or twice a week, and we work on those 3 areas. So when we did come back to full-time sevens training, that those 3 areas were going to be unbelievable. And then we just sort of built. And then as you sort of said before, no international competition. How are we going to play? How are we going to build combinations, cohesion, match fit? So we trained up a New South Wales team, a Queensland team, and an Australian Pacific team. Sweet. And then there was up. And then we travel, whether we went to Narrabri, Armidale, and Sydney. And again, leveraging our contacts, leveraging a Super Rugby tournament, any sort of fans or stakeholders that were in those areas, and then we'd have tournaments in those areas. So we got to play at teams that we were sort of pretty much coaching, and then a diversity of Pacific team as well. So that was our hit there. And then actually next week, continuing from that, we're playing Australia Sevens versus Australia Super Select. So all the super players that aren't in the 23, we've asked them to come and play Sevens, one, to prepare us, but two, to have a shot at the team, put your hand up for select. So we've got two of those booked in, one next week, and then a month later, if we don't end up playing New Zealand and Fiji, which we've got fingers crossed for there. So there's the mental piece, obviously the physical piece, and then there's the competitions. So, we've got our areas. How can we best utilise that? And being in Australia, we're in a pretty good position in terms of dealing with the pandemic, and our weather's pretty good. We're not in lockdown constantly, so we're an advantage there. And then the top four countries, New Zealand, South Africa, Fiji and Australia. That's how we finished at the World Series. And three of those teams are next door. We're neighbours. So as soon as borders do open or things relax, we can play against the best. And hopefully we do that. And then, and I've spoken to the Fiji and New Zealand coaches and Gareth and Clark that, we all go to the Olympics and we come home with 3 medals. We can find out which ones they are, but we're in a good position to prepare the Oceania for a successful Olympics. So as soon as we get the green light, we can play some international footy and get us ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I'm just thinking of the off-field stuff that you did with the players, and that in 10 years' time, a lot of them are going to look back and say, I learnt these skills when I was in the Aussie Sevens setup because there was this global pandemic, and instead of kicking cans and going into our shells, we got about it and we got out and did some work. So they essentially did a 1-year apprenticeship that's going to hold them in really good stead post-career, which is one of the big focus points now in professional rugby is players off the field. Like, have there been any like players who have just been like shining moments where it's like they've found their post-career kind of path out of that, or is it just like lots of good little stories?
No, lots of good little ones. Like a lot of them, like I think most people know, the better you are off the field, the better you are on the field. And particularly when you get those guys towards the end of their careers, they start to really stress. But you don't want that to be the case. You want it to be, a sevens career or rugby career is an apprenticeship, is a career. You come out the other way, at the other end, you're a very well established, intelligent and capable person to work anywhere. But look, the athletes in this program, like you can't get by not being intelligent, like because of the nature or the environment that which we compete in. You constantly have to think and adapt. You have to be self-aware, you have to be able to position yourself. Like your personality is under the microscope because there's only 12 of you on tour for 3 weeks. You can't really hide. You have to fit into this group. If you're going away on a tour with 40 players and 10 staff, you can hide and get around, but you can't here. And then on the field, you can't hide there either. So you have to be pretty self-aware. And then other like we got chippies, we got personal trainers, we got businessmen, we got all kinds of we've got artists, and we got heaps of uni students. So they found it as I guess it amped it up a bit, like because they're like, and I need some hobbies, and I certainly encourage that. And I think you spoke before about, within this, you got to choose an attitude in this pandemic. You got to okay, what are we gonna kick stones, or are we gonna look at what the advantage is? And we found, again, did the audit, we found so many advantages. And then we even used we had a trip to Munich just before the Olympic qualifier. So we went to Munich to prepare for the qualifier. And we went out to Dachau, one of the concentration camps. Yeah. And just like everywhere we go, we try and bring something back or learn something about history or about the country and how it all sort of ties in. And I bought every player Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl, he's a psychologist, but he was in a concentration camp, and did a bit of a book review on it and had a bit of fun with it. And then the pandemic hit, and there were so many correlations to the book, to what the world was going through. And I'm not, for one instance, comparing it to a concentration camp,
of course.
but there were a lot of lessons we could learn. And the biggest one was choosing an attitude.
Yeah.
To all suffering, there's something that's happening for a reason. You can choose your attitude, choose your freedom, I guess. So we had to choose an attitude that this was of positivity, really, and opportunity. And so we looked at all things that were benefit from it, and the biggest one being gives us another year to prepare.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's go for it. So that was the foundation of it, and then we went from there.
Awesome. No, it sounds great, and lots of positives coming out of it, no doubt. All right, what about for coaches out there, for sevens coaches? I think touching on your transition from the women's team to the men's team, obviously profiling that team, and you talk about doing an audit on that team. When you get together a group of players and you're forming a sevens team, what are some of the processes you do in terms of auditing them or looking at a playing profile of the group, and then determining what your style of play will be based on that?
Yeah, exactly that. Is basically you look at what you've got or what you could have, and try and find out or formulate a point of difference. So, if you looked at, like you compare the World Series, like Australia, are we going to be the biggest team? Probably not.
No.
We got Samoans and the Fijians and the Maoris, like the Kiwis. Are we going to be the fastest team? Probably not. The Americans with Carlin Isles and Perry Baker, the South Africans. We got some quick players. Don't get me wrong.
No.
What have we got? Or what is the game within the game that we can have? We can be the most adaptive, the most strategic, which is like the smartest. Are we going to be the team that just loves pressure? And then you sort of build your game plan around that. So you can't be unrealistic. Like you just see, because the Kiwis are the best. Everyone talks about the Kiwis. They just try and plug in what New Zealand do into the team that they've got. It's not going to work. No. So audit it and go, right, what have we got? What are we really good at? What does the game look like? And you can use all the the Moneyball stats and trying to work that out. And then you develop your vision, and then you build it around that. And certainly with my sort of style and looking at what the Australian team has, is that I work on a sort of principle around it. You give them the knowledge around how to play sevens or how to draw 2-on-1, and just basically the knowledge around, okay, there's 3 in the ruck there, that means a space must be out there, and then you demand vision, so you're always looking up, and that's the smart piece. Knowledge, vision, decision. And then if you've got the knowledge or the way the team plays and the different if they do this, we do this, then you look up, then you've got the information, so then you can make a decision. So knowledge, vision, decision, and then the easier bit is the execution, which is it's repetitive training. Perfection, boring, do it again and again and again and again. That's basically you do your, right, what's the team? What have we got? What can I get? What's going to be our point of difference? And then knowledge, vision, decision, execution.
Cool. Awesome. Good advice. And full disclosure here, before our interview, I went on YouTube and I watched the gold medal final with the women's team. And one thing I found from that was three of the tries were scored off tap moves. That kind of jumped out at me a bit. What kind of work do you do in preparing that?
Surprisingly, not.
Yeah.
Because again, if you looked at sevens and you look at origin of tries and the actual ball in play and whatever, that 70 or 60 to 75% of the game is unstructured. The tries that you're talking about, one of them we had 7, they had 6. It was just a simple
right, yeah.
The other one was more or less a quick tap 5 metres out from Charlotte. I can't remember the other one.
The first one was Donaghy in the corner.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. You spend some time on it, but the way I do it is that 60 to 75% of our training is from unstructured. And if you look at the stats of a game and say taps, I think out of I'd say there was 10 taps, 7 of them are going to be scored off quick taps. 3 of them are going to be structured setups that might go 3 phases.
Right.
It's a tap, but it's basically a penalty quick tap go. So your discipline has to be really good. And then if you looked at a game of sevens, I think there's 21 rucks in a game. This is on average. There's 8 restarts, which is pretty much unstructured to me. 8 restarts. And then scrums, there's 2.6 and lineouts is 2.1, of which one of them might be yours. So the taps are quick, but they're a higher proportion. But the restarts is the most. Restarts is 8. So on average, there's 6 tries plus the half time and full time. Scrums there's 2, and lineouts is 2 if you're lucky, and then penalties is I think again 7 or 8. But out of those 7 or 8, 6 of them are quick. There is an emphasis on it, but I wouldn't get focused in on set piece within sevens, just because it's a different game to 15s, and your ability to go from structured to unstructured in a defence and attack is where you're going to probably make your difference. But teams play differently. Some teams are only a set piece team; they're not as fit as others, so they want to slow it down and all that kind of stuff. But it is a big part, but a 25% part.
Yeah. No, and that's good. That's good information for coaches too, in terms of structuring their session plans in terms of what they're going to allocate importance to. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim. And we always end the podcast with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up and you first fell in love with the game, who were some of the players that really stood out to you?
I loved watching Michael Liner.
Oh,
play.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, he was
smooth.
Smooth, exactly.
Yeah.
Ball, composure, and he was always under the pressure moments he always stood up. But he was a fly half, which was what I played with some short help, but I just very classy individual.
Yeah, that's a good Queensland answer too. You've earned points there.
I used to run the tee out to him at East when he was played for uni, but he'd come to East and I'd run the tee out to him. So
Epic. Awesome. And second question, what about now? Who are some of the players you're liking watching on the world stage, whether it's 15s or 7s, men's or women's?
I'll go with 7s, and it's Charlotte Caslick.
Yeah.
I just think
Amazing.
every time she gets the ball, something's going to happen. And it's not just like you sort of associate her with attack. But, having coached her defense and her ability to win the ball at the ruck and her ruthlessness is something else. So to me, she's the complete player, and she's exciting to watch for so many reasons. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate some of your LinkedIn posts about the women's team and how your 4-year-old son asked you if boys are allowed to play rugby as well. I had a similar experience with my she's now 10, but when she was 8, she was going out to mini rugby, and we just watched the Aussie women's team, and she wanted to have her hair braided like Charlotte Caslick for a little tournament there. So that was pretty awesome, and the impact that the players have on people around the world is pretty powerful.
Yeah, tremendous impact, and it was a pretty enlightening day when my son said that. It was just like, wow, this is what an impact they've had on the generation.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and third question: what about coaching? Who are some of the high profile coaches out there that you like to bounce some ideas off? You mentioned Nusafora. Who are some other names out there that you respect what they're doing?
Yeah, look, I love talking to other sports, probably more than what I do my own. And being linked up in the AIS and being in an Olympic sport, you get those opportunities. So whether it be, Barry Dancer from hockey or Marcus Black from sailing, you just get a different perspective on, like I said to you, the technical side is probably the easier bit. It's the other bits, the communication, the systems, the monitoring, the preparation, the psychology. That's the really cool bit about sport, is that you're running a business within a game that you love. So those guys certainly have an impact, and then you just listen to guys on the radio and on podcasts and stuff like that. But ultimately, they have come from my sport. And David Nucifora, as I mentioned before, certainly in progressing and critiquing my career, but getting me into it was Ewan McKenzie. Just not by him mentoring me at all, just by me watching him and thinking, hey, this is something that looks like fun.
Yeah, awesome. And final question: what about someone in the grassroots who doesn't have the profile of those coaches that you feel deserves some recognition?
I'll go right down to the grassroots. You've never heard of this guy, but it's just through my experiences of coaching my son, who's now 6, and this bloke actually wrote me into doing it, and it was the hardest hour of my week. It was incredible and rewarding, but he does under 6, under 7s, under 8s a lot of time. His name's Mark Shaw at East Wallaroos, and he's a very successful businessman, but he just puts the effort in, and that's the ultimate grassroots.
Legend.
And, I admire him.
Yeah, I've coached my daughters in the minis, and my son coming in soon, and you earn your popsicle at the end of the session, that's for sure.
Well, I'm coaching them tonight, and it's just about Easter, so I'm
going to be fired up.
I'm bringing this chocolate Easter egg.
That's awesome,
because it's the same shape as a footy.
Yeah.
Right, you guys got to pass this, and if it breaks, then you're not eating it. But if it doesn't break, then you get to eat it. So I've turned to bribery.
I'm pretty sure they're eating it either way.
I don't stand a chance.
Yeah, no way. Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Tim. Really enjoyed the chat, and can't wait to see how both the Aussie men's and women's team progress in the Olympics when it happens. And want to say thanks for giving up some of your time for the chat.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
No, awesome. Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.